Hey, Charles Szczepanek here. First off, thank you so much for helping me reach 10,000 subscribers here on YouTube. It's been quite a journey, and a journey that started back in 2016, actually. I posted the first arrangement video here back then, and the channel only had about 300 subscribers at the time, and wow, how things have changed. So I thought it would be fun to take some of your questions and answer them today in kind of like a Q&A format. So kicking us off today, actually, the first thing that you heard was Billy Joel's Root Beer Rag, which was requested by Maria. I hope you enjoyed that, Maria. Thanks for the request. It was a fun one to learn, and of course, I hope you all enjoyed it. We've got an interesting mix of questions today, from personal stuff to finer details of music. So the first one we're going to jump into is this question from WS Jade, and they ask, what drives you to do YouTube? So some of you might know this and some of you might not, but I actually run 2 YouTube channels. This one, where I post performances, originals, arrangements, all that fun stuff. And I also run a channel called Pianist Academy, where I teach mostly classical piano technique and musicality, stuff related to that. Now, I mention this because the reasons behind both channels are quite different. And I know that WS Jade is a subscriber to both of them, so thank you for both subscriptions and for being a part of both communities. So starting with this channel, pure and simple, I love sharing music with other people. I kind of stumbled into the idea of composition and arranging. So back 15 years ago, I would have never thought that I'd be writing music all the time. My focus was completely on performing classical music. I was studying, I was in my bachelor's degree program. I was practicing 4, 5, 6 hours a day, sometimes, rarely, 8 hours a day. Really just learning a lot of repertoire, doing collaboration with other classical performers, just diving into all of that stuff. And a variety of circumstances led me down the path of arranging about 10 years ago or so, when I worked on my album Winter Daydreaming. Now, long before that, I had enjoyed writing guitar-driven stuff, like singer-songwriter style stuff, lyrics and all, drums and bass, you name it. But for about 8 years, I completely stopped doing anything like that. So that was around, oh gosh, back in my teen days, high school days, I did a lot of that stuff. And into my first year of my undergrad, I was still writing music that was, had lyrics and was guitar-driven, singer-songwriter type stuff. And then that all changed. That all went away. And for about 8 years, I didn't do anything creative in that sense. There was no original music being written. I didn't do anything like that. And gosh, even today, even though I've now been arranging music for, let's say, about 10 years, arranging music for piano, I still have not gotten back into the singer-songwriter stuff, and I really miss it. But there's only so much time in the day. So I bring all that up because YouTube has ended up being a fantastic place for me to share music with people around the world. If you put it in the perspective of performing and you compare YouTube to performing live, I mean, sure, it's not the same. But for example, my Schindler's List video, the arrangement video for that piece, at the time of filming this, it has nearly 700,000 plays. If I were to reach that many listeners playing live in a pretty big hall of, let's say, 1,000 seats, that would be like playing 700 concerts. And I think that would be a lot of fun to do. I'd really like to do more performing live. I think that would be great. But my point is, that's a massive number of people around the world who've heard that arrangement. And it's that kind of reach and the potential connection with people everywhere, way beyond what the people I can reach in my local community. Even if I do a little bit of touring, it would be way beyond the people I can reach that would come to hear me play in the variety of places I might play, right? It's just, there's so much opportunity to reach other people and for people to hear the music. And it's that connection that really inspires me to keep going and to keep writing music and arrangements and to keep filming videos, to keep doing this channel. That's really the drive. And hopefully those people that listen and watch the videos, hopefully all of you, you feel something when you hear my music. And it's the combination of those two things that really drives me to keep doing this channel, to keep writing new arrangements, to keep publishing videos here. I don't play music really for myself or for my own enjoyment. I absolutely get the most joy out of sharing that emotional journey with other people. And even more so, gosh, if other pianists pick up the sheet music that I publish, that I put out there, and they want to play my music themselves, that's super, super meaningful. That even more than just the sheer number of people that might hear what I've arranged, having other people play the notes that I've put down is so special. Now, just a quick word about my other channel, Pianist Academy. I do that on YouTube because since COVID happened, I've seen a huge increase in people who are trying to learn music and piano online. And there are some really big, popular channels out there that don't really give great advice, and they don't teach all that well. And so my mission there on Pianist Academy is again to reach people and connect with people and really help to guide them on their musical journey with all kinds of nuggets of information that I've learned over a lifetime of studying, really a lifetime. I mean, a couple degrees, sure, but I've been playing, as we're going to talk about in a few minutes, I've been playing the piano since I was in my threes, since I was about 3-4 years old. And I've been a professional musician for a long time. So I feel like there's so much information that I can share and really help save people time, help people from going down the wrong path with how they're playing and how they're approaching playing. And if they want to learn how to write music, just things that can save time and that that prevent people's wheels from spinning. Gosh, that's why I do the educational channel. That's why I do Pianist Academy, is to meet those people, to connect with those people, and to be the best teacher that I can be for them. And hopefully fill a gap in education online that I've seen that is there, and hopefully other people find it valuable too. So Samantha Buckway wrote in, and Samantha, thanks for being a subscriber here on the channel. And your question was about arranging and doing some composition and some ideas behind that. And your original question was about key changes and bridges between songs. And we had a few comments that went back and forth. And so what I'd like to do is talk a bit about, I think, 3 of my arrangements and talk about some of the original writing that I crafted in the style of arrangements, in the style of whatever I chose, and the style of the original tune, let's say. So we're going to start by looking at Pure Imagination, because I think this will answer a couple of your questions, especially we're not just kind of diving in and recreating the song and the same harmony, but we're doing something original and something different with it. That's something that I love to do when I write music. Some of my favorite bits that I arrange and that I write are the bits that aren't a part of the original song. So let's actually dive in right at the beginning of Pure Imagination and Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And at least in my score here that I'm showing you, almost the entire first page, or the first half of the first page, is original music by me, but it's reminiscent of Pure Imagination. And let's talk about why and kind of how it came to be. So those first few bars. Okay, and then we go into the little bell figure, right? So what makes these bars sound like Pure Imagination? The very, very first thing that was in my mind when I was working through this arrangement was that 2-note figure, the motif of Pure Imagination that is so iconic and so important to the song. So if you sing the verse, "Come with me and you'll be in a world of pure imagination," that motif, 1, Da, 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 da. It's a minor second. It's two notes right next to each other. So I decided that is maybe the quintessential part of the melody of Pure Imagination. It's what really makes it stand apart, right? So I'm gonna take these notes, seconds, and I'm gonna build something around using seconds. That was the entire idea, and I think as we go through all the examples that I'm gonna give you, all of the arranging ideas are built around a very simple concept that then gets broadened, that then gets varied, right? So first chord, it's in the key. It's the one chord of the key we're in. So it's a D flat major, 7, and in fact, it's almost an exact quote of the first statement of this when it appears. And this is the key that I've chosen to arrange it in. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember offhand, but I'm pretty sure the original is not in D flat. So that standing alone instantly sounds like it because it reminisces of that iconic part right in the beginning of a verse. Then we just have some little turnaround. Chord change, just the minor 6, but using the same motif. So now it's varied all of a sudden in bar 2, but the concept is still the same. All I've done, take one diatonic chord, use minor seconds in this rhythm. Another diatonic chord, minor 6, still use minor seconds. Followed by a descending third. That's part of the melody, right? New harmony, still diatonic harmony. Those first notes of that bar, once again, follow the same thing. It's almost like I've created a sequence, sequence in the very specific musical way. So a sequence is a pattern, right? A pattern of notes or a melody or a harmony that repeats and usually either goes up or goes down. So basically what I've done is I've created a sequence and then, and then we have this kind of repeat, right? And then at the end. Okay, so that is the basic principle of this whole introduction to this arrangement. Taking those two pitches a minor second apart that are so iconic, such a great part of the original melody, and expanding on it. The second thing that I've kind of done here that I'll just mention super quickly because I find it interesting and I love writing like this, is when I was writing this, I really heard a string orchestra section playing this. Especially we get to bar 3. This is just supposed to be, in my mind, really lush orchestral strings playing this with violin 1s on top. And continuing on. And having that in mind also completely changes my interpretation of the notes I wrote, because this no longer is supposed to be. It's not an arpeggio on the piano. It's not supposed to sound like that. It's supposed to be building this lush texture. So that's just something else I wanted to mention about that. It doesn't have anything to do with creating these sections, but it's something that I really love about the introduction here. Let's take a look at another song, actually. Let's take a look at Bring Him Home, because this is another one that it all stems from a very, very simple concept. The beginning of the melody of Bring Him Home is a leap of an octave. It's usually in F, right? Or the melody, does it leap in F? It might be a leap from C's to C's, but it's in the key of F. There it is. That's the original key. God on high, I think. Don't quote me on that. but it's that leap of an octave. This is the melody, right? So if we cue in to this leap, that is what the entire opening of this, I wrote 13 measures of introduction to this arrangement. It is all based around, as you see in the very first bar, a leap of an octave. And then we change and go from there. Let me continue to highlight the leaps of an octave. We're going to jump down a couple bars into the beginning of measure 9. Here we go. So leap of an octave. Right, here's another leap of an octave. Then this time more, but it reminisces of a large leap. So I took a little liberty there. Instead of just doing a third leap of an octave the third time, we get a little surprise. Yeah? So really this entire page is structured around that. Secondarily, if we go back to the original melody, there's descending thirds, followed by an ascending second, right? Here's a descending third, followed by an ascending second. And there it is again, and then descending the rest of the way. If we take a look at the left hand that I wrote here, here we go. We have descending third, up by a major second. And then if we make that our starting note, descending third, up by a second. Descending third, up by a second, and so on and so on and so on. They look separately like it's just groups of thirds and they're phrased. Right? But within that, there's another part of the melody of the original tune. So if we think, God on high, second line are the exact notes in this key, G flat, E flat, F. It's right there in the melody. It's just not connected to A flat like I've done here. Okay, the stuff in the middle, there's just some flourishes. So this, that's not all that hard to play actually, but it looks cool. Descending thirds, that would be brutal if it was in one hand, but because the hands can share. That's just following a scale, diatonic. There are no extra accidentals, right? And then we get into this bit, which is, I am heavily referencing Liszt's piano sonata in B minor. And a few pages in, there is this section. That bit of music. So that's really beautiful, right? But take a look at the writing between that and what I've done here. So I know I've played that piece. I have that reference very clearly in my mind. Starting in measure 9. That's where all of that left hand is coming from, right? Is from that piano sonata, that type of reference. And I've just added into this, first of all, a melody that leaps by octave. Just steps down scale-wise, right? once again, where things start to change and get a little bit more interesting, the harmony is dictated first and foremost, in my case, by what I want the melody to do. I always envision the melody first. And then I usually write harmony around that. All right, one more example for you. This time the Rhapsody on Bond, James Bond. I love this. And despite the introduction being 2 pages long here and 20 bars or so, it's once again, it boils down into something quite simple, actually. Okay, so we have the opening statement, which is very Bond. I didn't create that. That is definitely a part of the original theme, right? But what comes after that? Again, let's look horizontally and let's describe what harmony is going on through all of this. We have okay, so if we add all that together, we've got an E minor chord, which is our 1 chord, simple chord, it's just in an inversion. And then on top of that, we have the 9. Oh, sorry, not the 9. We have the sharp 7, major 7. So this is the James Bond chord. It's a minor, major 7. And then with that, we have 9 as well, the 9 of the chord. You play all that together, it's very James Bond sounding, right? All I've done is break that up into this somewhat virtuosic passage, just running passage work. But it's just this chord. That's it. Okay, then when we change directions at the end of this and we come down, this is, oh, guess what? It's an E minor, harmonic minor scale. So we just don't start on E. But once again, it's it's not as complicated as it might sound, and it's not as complicated as it might look on the page. It's just E minor, harmonic minor, right? With some extra flourishes around it. In this case, let's see. I haven't played it in a few months, so. But it's actually very simple harmonically. I took 1 chord and added to it the harmonic minor scale. That's where just about this entire page comes from. Move on to the next page and we have all of these Lisztian It's just a Lisztian style passage that once again is very simple harmony. It's the same chords, right? And it's actually, if you go back here, the same chords that I introduce in measure 10. Right here, there it is. We just break those 4 chords out. That's the first bar, second bar, 17. Oh, sorry, first bar, the half of the bar, second half of the bar, that's here. We have the next chord, next bar, 17, next chord. And then we go back and then we repeat it again. And then we get to, right? So in all of these cases, I've picked out one thing that I find to my ears is very characteristic of the piece I'm arranging. In the case of Pure Imagination, it's 2 pitches. Right? In the case of Bring Him Home, it was first the leap of an octave, followed by the melodic movement throughout the main melody. In the case of this, it's 2 things. Very simply, the James Bond chord and the E harmonic minor scale. and combining those two together with some flourishes, with some other pianistic writing. And that stuff I really would reference, just having played a lot of Liszt's in particular, Liszt's music in particular. My hands tend to, I don't have to think very hard about writing something like that, or even if the hands had octaves, something like that, or shared octaves. I don't write that very often because you'll cut up your thumbs, the side of your thumbs, very easily when you have to play passages like that. But it's really where it all comes from. So Samantha, I hope that this gives you some ideas, and I hope it kind of breaks your the writer's block that you might have, because it doesn't have to be complex. And in fact, in all of these cases, it's very simple. It's something very, very simple that just gets expanded upon. And if you really want to, and you want to go through and study some of the great composers and study some great classical music, that is an overarching theme. In many, many great works, there is one theme. I'm just taking like 2 notes and expanding upon it for a handful of measures. The great composers might take a melody that's 8 bars or 16 bars long. They'll take that and then they'll expand on that, and they'll take little parts of it. And that's how we get sonatas, piano sonatas that are 30 minutes long or something, or concerti that are that long. But they all sound like they're one piece of music. They're all related. And that is not easy to do by any stretch, right? When what they're doing is they're taking a massive, actually, amount of data, 16 bars of notes, and then that's getting dissected into all of its like component bits. And those little components get varied here and they get varied there and they get changed subtly. And then before you know it, we have this entire almost new work, right, at our fingertips, but it's all related. We don't have to go that far. We definitely don't have to go that far in writing arrangements and in doing other things like this. And we can write some really interesting things. Just look for one particular thing to latch onto and see how far, where can you take it? And how far away from the original can you pull that one thing? Limit yourself to literally 2 notes. What 2 notes are characteristic? And see where you can go. Thanks for the question, Samantha, and thanks for being a subscriber on the channel. This was a lot of fun to talk about. So thanks so much for the question. All right, so we have a question from Meaghan, and she asks, what is your earliest memory surrounding the piano? Now, the absolute first memory that I have of piano, it's not me playing, but it's of sitting in the waiting room of a piano studio where piano lessons were happening and waiting for my older sister, Jackie, she's 8 years older than me, waiting for her to have her piano lesson. And there were probably 4 or 5 lessons happening, and you could hear all of the pianos playing in that waiting room. It was kind of cacophonous kind of sound. And this was before I started taking lessons myself, so I was probably 3 years old or so. That memory, for whatever reason, that memory is incredibly vivid. I can remember the wood paneling on the walls. I can remember the carpeting. I can remember the chairs. I can remember the smell of the piano studio. And not like it wasn't the most pleasant or pleasing smell. It was probably some combination of old furniture, like wooden furniture, probably the pianos that were in there, and dust, something like that. But it was so distinct, and I remember it so vividly. And if I ever smelled something like that again, I would absolutely be taken back to that moment, sitting there, hearing everybody's lesson happening, and just it was like almost having the senses overwhelmed. And maybe that's why it's so vivid. But it's there and it's super vivid. I was in my 3s. I was 3 years old. Somehow, somewhere in that year. Now, the first memory that I have of myself on the piano bench was probably 6 months or so later. So I'm on the piano bench, and my mom is standing behind me and kind of looking over my shoulder. And I remember looking at the pages of one of the really early, maybe the primer Alfred method book. It was very, very early. And, it was one of those books where the note names are inside the note heads. I remember I don't remember what the song was, but I remember looking at a page in that book and seeing the notes and seeing the letters and remembering my mom standing behind me. And yeah, this was a few months later than that piano studio memory. So I'm either in my 3s or early 4s. And about a month after this memory, I remember getting to a point in the method book where I flipped the page, and all of a sudden we go from having a few notes to the grand staff being introduced, and 2 octaves below middle C to 2 octaves above middle C with the middle C ledger line in the middle. I remember that page so distinctly, and I remember feeling almost concerned. I remember feeling like it was going to be so difficult to learn this. There was so much there. So many notes. And I felt like that for a little while. And it was like a week or two later, I remember again being at the piano, sitting on the bench and playing music and thinking, this isn't all that hard, actually. No, I'm not saying I was, fluent in reading notes like that at that point. Definitely not, as good as I was years later, and nowhere near like what I do today at all by any means. But it was just a few weeks between the times that I went from feeling really worried about how hard reading music was going to be to it feeling really like a second language to me. And that was all before I started actually taking piano lessons from a teacher. So I had worked through a number of method books, again, with my mom around, and she knew a little bit of music, and she knew enough to help me through those beginning pages of a few books. And when I started actually taking lessons officially, I could read all the notes. I never had a lesson on how to read sheet music, how to read notation. It just continued on from there, really, with other details and more that built for years. And those are some of my earliest memories that are related to piano. And man, I could talk for hours probably about all of the memories that I have related to piano or performing or composing or a whole variety of stuff. But there you go. Those are a couple that really stick out for me, that were all the way at the beginning of this journey of music that I've been on really for just about as long as I can remember. Okay, so we had a question come in from Bunny Hollow Crafts. Thanks for being a subscriber, Bunny. And thanks for being a subscriber to actually both channels, Pianist Academy and here. And your question is about Chopin and a Chopin Nocturne and how to play some of this stuff in the middle section of one of the Nocturnes. And this is something I usually do a lot more talking of on the other channel on Pianist Academy. So I thought I'll give all of you a preview, and especially because Bunny asked this question, I'll give all of you a little preview of what goes on over there. So we're looking at Chopin's Opus 37, number 2 in G major. And Bunny's question in particular was about the middle section. And there are some tricky notes to read, I think. You were mentioning that things go into sharps and the accidentals change, and it's kind of overwhelming to look at. So I've got 3 tips for you for this middle section. So the first one that we're going to talk about is just understanding the visual behind what's going on in the notes here. So anytime we have a lot of accidentals added or something, anytime there are a lot of accidentals added, we're not functioning in the key of the piece anymore. So if this is in G major, the key of G major has 1 sharp, it's in the key signature, it's F sharp, right? Anytime we have measures that have lots of flats or lots of sharps within them, that means we have harmonies that might be quite far away from harmonies that relate to the key the piece is written in. So the first thing that I'd like you to do, it looks overwhelming, but if we can boil it down to a few simple harmonies, this is going to feel so much more attainable. Okay, so I don't have measures on this score, but we're looking at basically this section from here till here, bottom of the page. Okay, and you were talking about these bars as having, look at all those sharps. They're all over the place. It's like every chord, right? Every 6th, every 3rd, there's accidentals of some kind. So first thing, if we take this slow, and let's just start right on the downbeat of this bar. If we take it real slow, what harmony are we actually in? the very first chord gives it away. And if we look at all of the left hand here, 4/8 notes here, those all build an A major triad, right? And then we have 2 notes at the end that are not. So A major over 4/8 notes. Let's see, does the right hand correspond with that? Well, that one doesn't, but this is A major. That's related to A major. It's got a G sharp in it. G sharp is part of the A major scale. Okay. All of these notes in the right hand from the beginning of the bar all the way till, oh, even further than that, all the way till here, across the midpoint of the bar, these are all functioning in A major. And the couple little notes we have that aren't, which is that guy and that guy, they are so closely related to A major that we're just going to call it A. Technically, that's a D major chord over an A in the bass, but it's not really functioning as D. We don't hear it as a separate harmony, right? So the other highlighted chord, this D and G sharp, that sounds like an E major 7, which would be the dominant in A major. Both of those are diatonic within the key of A major, but the overarching harmony, the most important thing that I want you to see, is that this entire bar, or this entire half bar, I should say, that's all functioning in A. Can we feel it in A instead of in G? You might even go so far as to say, if I rewrote this, grab some staff paper, if I rewrote these notes in A major, put the A major key signature on the left side of the page, write out the notes, make sure you spell them all correctly, how difficult is it going to look? It's still not going to look super easy. It's full of sixths and thirds, but there won't be any additional accidentals if we identify that. So that is the very, very first thing. Identify what this harmony is. If we move on to the next part of the bar, we've got the last 2/8 notes of the bar. So this is a combination of things. Okay? We have, I think, the overarching harmony here is F sharp minor. Oh, sorry, F sharp major. F sharp major, okay? Which we get right here between the hands on that chord. So can we see this again as F sharp major? Resolving to B minor. So A, F sharp, B minor. Playing the harmonies alone makes a lot of sense, right? And if we just know how to build our diatonic, our triads, we can just play a simple progression. Sounds nice, puts our hands in the right kind of shape, right? Okay, the other thing that this last 2/8 notes of the bar kind of also feel like is like a prediction of, or the 6/4, the second inversion of B minor, where we're going to end up in the next bar. So we kind of have a combination of those two things mixed. Let's look a little bit more closely at the theory behind this. F sharp major, if we add the 7, which is E, this is the 5 chord, the dominant chord of B minor, which is where we end up going. F sharp is also, F sharp itself is in the key of A, where we're coming from on the left side of the bar, right? There's F sharp. Typically in A major, this would be F sharp minor. So there's a little bit of mode mixture that Chopin has done here. Not only just raising the third, but in doing so creates a dominant chord in another key. Okay, so you're starting to see the point here. Throughout all of this, we're just looking for what is this half bar or so. What is the overarching harmony? We had A major, then we have F sharp major. If we go on, the next bar, for the first 4/8 again, we have B minor. And then at the end, E major or E major or E7, E dominant 7. One of the two, however you want to think about it. So those might seem like they're far away from G major, right? In G major, we don't actually have, let's see, we have B minor. That's the only chord that's diatonic to G major in this, and these two bars, this very beautiful and interesting chord progression, right? So in order to get rid of all those accidentals, let's simply think about what the underlying harmony is. That is tip number one. You can apply that to all kinds of other spots in this nocturne, because all the kinds of passages that are in thirds and sixths like this, they can be boiled down to more simple harmonies, or at least more simple to digest than trying to read all of the accidentals that are presented all the time, everywhere, right? Okay, the second tip that I have for you has to do with how to practice this. So, and this can be applied not only to this two-bar section that we're talking about with all the sharps, but all over the place whenever we have a bar that's filled with sixths and or thirds. Okay, but the basic principle is going to be understanding how we can group things by lifts and drops into the keys. So if we start at the beginning of this, when the right hand reaches up, I tend to feel this as these two are grouped together, and we have just a miniature kind of a down motion followed by an up motion. And I'm talking about something in the wrist, and also how we just feel this is a release, allowing the hand to travel. So down and then up, allowing the hand to travel. And then we have down into the next group. And that continues on for many notes. Yeah. And then I like to feel an up here on the 5-1, followed by a down on the 5-2. Okay, so is this making sense? We're basically creating little groups, relatively little groups of notes, right? So here's one, and then the next group. And that would end across the bar line at the end of the phrase. So you could also switch around depending on how your hand feels. There isn't exactly one right answer here. You could move this down motion onto the previous pitch. So you'd have up on C and E and then down in one longer motion. Either of those would be perfectly acceptable, completely based on what feels good to your hand. But really important, we're breaking this into smaller sections, so it's not just fingers moving and trying to navigate some actually pretty awkward fingering. There's a lot of, it feels kind of like the fingers are crawling around the keyboard throughout this nocturne. So we want to create groups for the hand. And we can also practice them that way. We can practice through those groups a little bit more quickly. They're probably going to be within the group a little bit easier to accomplish. And at the end of the group, where we're building in this release gesture, that's going to be maybe the trickier spots to navigate, the trickier technical spots, where the hand probably has to make a jump, where we have the same finger used twice, like 5-5. We cannot physically legato 5-5 together, so it's a perfect opportunity. There's nothing else we can do, so it's a perfect opportunity to reset and allow a new group to happen. I hope this is making sense. We can continue on. Let's see. So I think I kind of like an up and then a down. Let's see if that works. Yeah. And then we have one more gesture. down here on that G sharp, and then it would always be preceded by an up motion prior to that. So yeah, and as you practice this and as you build these in, it's not gonna feel like we've got all these 16th notes that are just running away from us. It's gonna feel like we've given ourselves places to reset. We've given ourselves kind of landmarks in the middle of the phrase that are gonna make this much, much easier to accomplish. Yeah, I hope those help. Third really quick tip, take your time literally with the tempo in this piece. There are so many recordings out there of people, and I think a lot of pianists actually rush through this Nocturne. And in some ways, because of the technique required for the sixths and the finger crossings and the thirds, the tempo that's sometimes taken is less of a Nocturne and more of like an etude tempo. And I'd really encourage you to stay away from that. Don't treat this like a study. And it can be so much more beautiful if we take it slowly and really explore all of the harmonies and really explore all of the lines and the phrases in there. And then also, to boot, when we have lines like this, we're not trying to blaze through it to show off or something like that. It's not, you know, it's nothing like that. It's just the most beautiful shape and melody that we can create. And that should make it also a lot easier. There's no pressure to take a faster tempo or anything like that. So, Bunny, I hope these help you a whole lot. Thanks for subscribing to both channels again. I also want to just give a shout out to Betty Bie, who commented on the community page of the channel here. She talked about how one piece of mine, an original of mine actually, improv a la Nils, I think it was improv number 3, because it was the third improv that I did during that recording session. And it's a la Nils because of the reference and style to Nils Fram, who I have listened to for many years. Very interesting contemporary pianist. But Betty Bie wrote in and said that she loved the piece so much that she kind of created her own piece of music around it. And that is like almost, that's what I live for as a musician and sharing music with all of you online. First of all, because that piece was an improv, there is no sheet music for it. So Betty couldn't go out and buy the sheet music and learn it herself. No, she listened to the song and it moved her so much that she figured out what key it was in and what the motifs were, and then built her own piece, which she called Moment of Reflection. And she built that around the improv I did. And that is so cool. And I really wanted to be sure and mention, and I'm gonna link, I'm gonna leave a link to her video playing it for you to go take a listen to. Because, gosh, that means the world to me, that you would take a piece of music that I wrote, and it was so meaningful, and to just continue to explore with it. I'll be smiling about that for a long time, and I'll probably be telling that story for a long time. So thank you, Betty, for sharing that with me, and I'm really glad that I get to share your work with everybody here. So be sure and go check out Betty's Moment of Reflection. All right, I think that's gonna wrap this up for today. This has been such a cool opportunity to just share things about music and about life with all of you. Thank you to everybody who wrote in and asked a question. And be sure, if you didn't have a chance to ask a question, or if you didn't know about the question, my question to you, what do you want to hear about? Be sure and stay engaged on the community page of this channel. I do usually only put arrangements out about once a month or so, but I'm always doing sheet music giveaways over there. That's started this year in 2023. So you can always be sure and check out if there's one going on. And I love staying in touch. So I love hearing from all of you in the comments. So please continue to leave comments on videos. And thank you so much for your support. Thank you for all of you who buy the sheet music for the music that I write. That is incredibly meaningful. And I would love to hear you play whatever it is that you're working on that I've written. I would love to hear it. So always feel free to leave a comment, leave a link to a video of you playing something. Always feel free to do that here on the channel because I'd love to hear it, and I'm sure a lot of other people would enjoy it too. All right, thanks again, everybody. This has been a really cool celebration. Thanks to all of you for sharing it with me, for helping this channel to get to 10,000 subscribers. Super, super meaningful, and I can't wait to see what's coming up and to see what's next. So thanks again, and I'll see you probably in the next arrangement.